business is a hot mess, it's you.
Traci, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be a fun conversation. I kind of want to start at the beginning, actually. I'm really curious to know how you got into project management, because I don't know if that's something that people like gung-ho, they're going to college, they want to do project management, or if it's something that just sort of happened upon you. So I'd love to hear your story.
I don't think that anyone I think they fall into it because of a skill set that they have, right? Like no one says like, as they're a little kid, I want to be a project manager someday, right? Like it doesn't quite.
That's what I thought.
Right? Like it doesn't have the exciting ring to it, right?
Well, that's what happened to me. So that's why I was like, there's no way that, but I don't know, you never know with people if like that was their dream job when they were a little kid, but I figured I'd ask.
Well, there is something to it though, right? Because I've always been someone who I have to finish something. If I start it, it needs to be finished, right? And I have that kind of meticulous thing within me, right? Like it needs, there's an itch, right? That if it's not finished, I need to tie up, I need to dot all those I's, I need to cross all those T's. And I've always been like that, always.
Yeah.
So there's something in that.
Like stuff out of place. I'm like, it has to be like, everything has a home. It has to be put away. Like, otherwise I think itch is the perfect way to describe it.
Right. Yes. And it's like, even if I know I've written an email and I know that I should have like capitalized that letter, I cannot send that. And it's not a big deal. It's totally not a big deal. I need to go back and fix it. Right. Like that sort of thing. Right. It's just, it needs to be how it needs to be. Right. Totally. But I grew up, kind of to answer your question, I grew up knowing that I was good at getting stuff done, for lack of a better word. And so I tried kind of everything. Right out of college, I actually worked for a promotional products company while I was getting my master's. So I did that. And it was very much, it was project work, because it was, people place orders and you've got to get everything set, get all the proofs done, get them their products, that sort of thing. So it was great learning. It was perfect for me, but it's also not really sexy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went into it like, I want to do wedding planning. Wedding planning was miserable to me. Like it was such a high stress. It was my skill set. And yet the brides are a lot of work.
Totally. Right? And that's also, I feel like, people management at that point. Like it's beyond project management, and there's a lot of like fielding emotions and fielding personalities when it comes to wedding planning. That is a job that I most certainly could not do.
No. And it's just, I don't have the patience for it, right? Like totally. we're here to get a job done. We're here to get you married. Let's just do it. Right? Yeah. We don't need the drama.
Just trust me, like I'm going to get the job done. Right. Don't just go get married and have fun. Like let me handle everything. But I think like from, one control freak to another, it's like hard to relinquish that, especially on what is considered your most important day. I can't imagine.
Yeah. Big time. Right. And then I went into, so again, trying, like I knew I had that skill set. And so then I was living in San Francisco at the time. And I tried to go into kind of big corporate events, working at the convention centers, those kinds of things. But it's literally, you spend a year planning an event and then I don't think you sleep for the entire like 3 to 4 weeks before. And it's high stress environment. It's just, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
It was too much. And what I landed on, and with guidance from friends, right? It's so interesting how you look back and you realize that somebody just said one thing and it just shifted things. And someone mentioned that I should do the PMP.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right. And so
I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I feel like we have similar stories a little bit. I also I went to school for art history, and then when I graduated college, I ended up working for Disney because that was my dream job at the time. It was in sales, and then I wanted to be an Imagineer, but it's impossible to transition laterally in such a big corporate company. So I took some time away. I moved abroad. I ended up working in our project development department at a hotel in Macau. And I was doing project management for large scale attractions. And similar to what you were saying, the type of work in that it requires like a super organized person, it requires somebody to be on top of everything, and it requires somebody to be kind of like a go-getter and like hardworking, detail oriented, hyper organized. And I loved that aspect of it, but also I had to work like crazy hours up right before launch because we're launching this like, you know, lobby show that happens every 20 minutes, and like I was working my regular like 9 to in China's 9 to 6:30, and then I would go home, work out, eat, and then at like 11 p.m. at night I'd have to go back to work and like watch the show because it's, you know, hospitality, so it's 24 hours, so you can't
Right.
be running the show while there are guests still playing in the casinos. So it was like I had to go in the middle of the night, and it was honestly, it was super high stress. The hours were terrible, and it was like, okay, so I think like in this time, especially with people who lean towards project management, it's such like a weird thing because you're like, I feel like this works, but certain parts of it aren't working. And I actually learned about PMP, which through my job because my boss had recommended that I do the
Mhm.
certification. So I'd love for you to tell people what PMP stands for, what the test is all, or what the situation is with it.
Yeah, it's project management professional. It's PMI, Project Management Institute, kind of the gold standard of project management knowledge learning certifications, and it's just the certification for project
Yeah,
managers, and it's, in my opinion, an extremely hard test.
it's
And
crazy.
right.
I got the book to study, and it was like the fattest book, like
It's like
worse
a
than
phone
doing
book.
like the SAT, or even I thought about getting my business or my master's, my MBA, and it was worse than the studying for the MBA program as well. And it was like very dense material. And I took one look at it and I was like, nah.
So I actually got my MBA, and I thought the PMP was worse than my thesis.
Yeah.
So
See, I knew. I was like, that's not going to be for me. That's not happening.
yeah. And at the same time, though, so I did, I mean, it was weeks and weeks of studying and getting in there. I did pass the test. And the really cool thing was it opened a ton of doors for me. So
Really?
I was living in the Bay Area at the time. And so it was just really, uh, I was able to be a consultant and
Mm,
just kind of move between some of the really big companies, the Gap, Visa, Charles Schwab, Williams Sonoma,
wow.
kind of all of those, big names that I would just do projects. And um, when
That's
the project
crazy.
was finished, I would, find something else. And I think I like that a lot.
Yeah.
For me, especially, I think one of the great things about projects is that there's always an end, which means you get to
Hmm.
go try something new. And there's always a new
Totally.
challenge, always something different. And so you're not getting bored. Uh,
Yeah.
and I landed kind of from the popcorning around, just kind of seeing, different places. I actually landed at Monte Foods.
Okay.
And
Wait, sorry. I wanna jump back really
yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
because I think this was something that I was curious about when I was thinking about becoming PMP certified. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, it's something that you put on your resume. Like, is it really going to make that big of a difference in terms of opportunities that come your way? But apparently it does. So I feel like for people
Mhm.
listening, that is a good takeaway that this is one certification that actually will make a difference on your resume. Because, I mean, for you to go from corporate events to then being booked on a consistent basis through these big companies, I mean, that's a huge shift in such a great and amazing way. And I also like what you said about how projects end. I think that was also something that I really liked about it is truly like it's always something new. You will never really get bored.
Exactly. And what was I going to say to that? It'll come to me.
That always happens.
I had something to add there, and it'll come to me in 5 minutes when we're on to another subject.
I can't wait. So you landed at Del Monte Foods.
I did. And oh, I know what I got it. So with your PMP also, it's really great for recruiters. So
Okay.
you can actually use that as a tool to have recruiters actually find
Mm,
consulting
okay.
jobs or full-time jobs or whatever it is. They love the PMP.
That's a hot tip.
But I landed at Monte Foods. I was there for about 10 years, full-time employee for about half of it. And then I moved from San Francisco to small town USA. So I was a consultant for about 5 years there and just really loved it. It was launching new products and services. I still see products that, we'll go grocery shopping with, I now have 4 boys. And so we'll go grocery shopping and then I did these. Right? Like I created these, and so it's so cool because I worked a lot in software. I learned, over the Bay Area,
Yeah,
all of that. It's so cool to have a physical product that you can actually pick up and
totally.
you worked on this from start to finish, from idea all the way through to actually being on the shelves and being saleable. And during my time, I mean, I've been a project manager now for about 25 plus years. And I estimate that I've launched at least $1 billion worth of products and sales into the
That's
marketplace
crazy.
with everything that I've done.
Damn. I think project management is so fun in that way. I think part of the appeal and the like obsession that people have with it is the satisfaction that you get from exactly what you said, which is starting from something at zero
An
and then
idea.
building it over time. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then actually seeing it in the physical and then closing out that chapter because I think the difference I think about this a lot because as somebody who's like an aspiring entrepreneur wants to have their own company, I think a lot of the skills from being a project manager are incredibly applicable. But the key difference for me is that it's really never over. Like unless you are probably yeah, unless you're in a tech situation where you're selling your software or you want to, close out or exit your company at some point, which is not the case for me. And truly, it's such a satisfying experience. Like my project that I worked on is a legacy that I have. It will be there for at least 20 years in situ, and I can go and see it whenever I want to, and I can look at it and be like, I built that.
Did
And I'm
that.
sure
Yeah.
I'm sure my mom walks around all the time and she's like, my daughter did that, which is totally different than something in tech. Not to
Yeah.
discount software because it is important, but it's different when it's physical. So you were
Physical.
working as in products, like were you coming up with the ideas and then launching them?
No, so I would lead the teams. So I would
Nice.
take like it was and I think I loved it too because they were like multi-million, multi-year projects with like teams of 50 or more. And I'd have like 8 to 9 of them at a time. So
Wow.
for me, that's just such a, you don't get bored ever
Totally.
with that. Right. And so they had an innovation department and so they were always coming up with ideas. And then we do consumer
Cool.
testing and we'd see what consumer testing came from it. And then based off of the consumer testing, we'd move into development phase with R&D. And so we'd be working on prototypes and then we move right. And so it was like,
Yep.
we had all of these different phases and all of these different steps and it would take 2 to 3 years. But like the coolest thing to me was that they could give me that idea in the beginning and I would map it out and I would tell them, okay, in 3 years on March 5th, we can launch this thing and we would hit it
That's crazy.
every single time and or pull it forward depending on what was going on. And that is just
It's,
satisfaction
you're like an
times 100.
oracle, but it's not magic. It's just like
Right? It's
good
just,
project management.
yeah, it's just project management. That's it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And while I was there, I was able to also create a lot of the systems and structures and,
Mm,
templates and process and, all that stuff that I believe they're still using today,
yeah.
that they're using in launching products and maintaining and
And through that,
all
you
of
mean I assume you mean everything from the project management process, in addition to increasing efficiencies and highlighting areas where there were opportunities for better working practices.
correct. It's so funny because I've transitioned over the last 15 or so years into virtual small business online. And I find that I always say like they're a hot mess on the back, right? Like they just we're taught sales, we're taught marketing. We're not taught how to lead a team, how to delegate, how to put the systems in place. And so a lot of times these entrepreneurs, they have it all in their head and they're like, okay, you do that, you do that, you do that, you do that. Okay, we got everything done for today.
Yeah.
Instead of setting up the systems and processes.
Yeah. This
Thing
was something
is,
that I was really excited to talk to you about because I just came from corporate and now I work in a startup, and it's such different environments in the best way for me personally.
mhm,
But one of the things that I do hear people talking about now is like we're going through a pretty awesome period of growth for our company. And part of what was a really interesting thing that I took away from a conversation the other day was my boss was saying how growth is great because it's great, but it's also highlighting the areas where we have opportunity to improve, especially with processes. And as an aspiring entrepreneur, I like took that little nugget with me and I was like, okay, how can I make sure that I set myself up from the beginning
yeah,
with good processes so that I'm not scrambling later. And it's so hard because I'm having to ask myself, what do I not know? And I feel like this is always the constant folly for me is like, I don't know what I don't know. And so it's hard to ask questions when you don't know what kind of questions you should be asking. So for my listeners, like this is the meat of the conversation. And this is why I was really excited because I think this is such an important conversation for people who are, just starting a business or even have their own business. And to your point, is likely a hot mess. Like one of my best friends, his business partner, and their business that they work on together is a hot mess, and he's been trying to work on it for so long to get things like in a good working flow. So but before we jump into that, I'm sorry, I'm rambling over here, but
yeah.
I want to know what made you get into the shift of working with small businesses.
Well, so I was going to say on that point though, while Domani was bigger, they still needed a lot of
Mm,
there were hot messes over there too, right? Like maybe
interesting.
they were different kinds of hot messes versus the entrepreneur, but they, and I don't know that I found a company yet that doesn't
Yeah.
have it, right? So give ourselves some grace in all of it, realizing that we're not all a hot mess in some
Yeah. We
point,
all have
right?
areas of
Yeah.
opportunity for sure.
Yeah. But I think that it's so interesting in working with people. Um, my advice is to my advice is to simplify.
Yes.
You need some marketing. You need something to do marketing. You need something to do sales. You need something basically to sell them, right? You need a product or a service, and you need some sort of like customer support
Mm,
or longevity to keep them coming back,
yeah.
right? My whole thing is like figure just that out.
Yep.
Start
Those are
there.
like those are like the spokes on the wheel that keep everything moving
Yes.
and it's like the most, it's almost like the key things that without which you cannot succeed, but there are so many other extraneous things that you don't need that you can still succeed without.
Correct. And we're think about kind of the messages as entrepreneurs, right? You go and say, I don't even know what I don't know. So you Google it, or you're on Facebook or Instagram and you're talking about entrepreneurs and it's like how to 10x your business in the next 20 days. Well, that sounds amazing. I'll go that way. And then you go down that direction. You're like, I don't know. That doesn't feel really good. And then it's like, how to do sales calls. I need to know how to do sales calls. And so off you go over there. And then you go to marketing. I need social media. I literally need to be represented on every channel and I need to be posting at least 4 times a day with lives, with reels, with stories, right? Like all of these things that it
Yeah.
can it can get
It's
so
chaos.
crazy. So you're and when we're starting, we're usually starting with just us and
Yeah.
or a small core team, which means we can't do it all. So we're doing a lot of things poorly instead of the key things and the core things well.
Mm.
And so my advice, and even with my clients that I start working with that actually have had the successes and have built their businesses to multi six figures and beyond, a lot of what they're doing is not bringing in revenue, is not bringing in new leads, is not doing a whole lot of anything, but they've been doing it for so long that they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's pull it away, right? Like get it out of there, get it out of the way, stop with the noise and just make it simple, figure
Hmm.
out what works. You can, and with that, right? It's almost like you're building a house and you need that solid foundation. And once you have that solid foundation and that solid foundation is working for you, add another brick,
Yeah.
right? And that brick could be the social media, and then add another brick. And that brick could be a podcast, and then add, right? But you're adding bricks on a solid foundation instead of having a rocky foundation and trying to just keep piling stuff on to make it all go.
Yeah. I think the hard thing for a lot of people to stomach, especially at first, is that building good products, services, businesses takes time and it takes a lot of effort. And I think that people turn to the social media solutions, like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, 10x your business or go viral in 2 days. Here's how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
you're like, okay, but we know deep down that none of these quick fixes actually work. And to your point, the only thing that really is going to make a difference in your business is you showing up consistently and executing well on a consistent basis. Without those two things, like, it's never going to work long term. You might sure get a viral video, but you're not going to be able to convert that into anything that's dramatically useful for your business without the strategies and the processes in place to support those kinds of, viral moments, or, like, apply that
Totally.
metaphor to any part of your business.
Totally. Like you could have that viral video or whatever it was, and you bring all of the people in there, and let's say you got a flood of people, and that's amazing. But if you don't have any of the systems, any of the processes on the back end to actually serve those people and deliver
And
on what you promised, it's going to be a really short lived, it's your 5 minutes of fame, right? Like it's going to shoot out,
or
it's going to spark up, and then it's just going to die down.
Or even worse is that, let's say, for example, you're being flooded with a huge volume of orders for your business that you now have to fulfill. And
Right?
if you can't fulfill them in a timely manner, people are going to be emailing you and being like, hey, when's my order coming out? And if you don't have a customer service team in place because you're fulfilling their orders and you don't answer their emails, and people are going to be like, oh, I'm never shopping with this person again. So it's like a very short-lived high if you aren't ready for that. So
Right.
I'm curious to know how you get your clients set. Like, how do you get their processes in place? What are your processes for helping other businesses basically get their shit together?
Yeah. I think there's a few different things, but when we're first starting, they're usually absolutely miserable. They have no time for themselves. They
Mm.
band-aided it together, right? So they
Yeah.
figured some pieces out, but it's kind of, they got band-aids holding it all together, and they know that if they relax for even 2 seconds, it's all just going to come crashing down, right?
Yeah.
And so they're just on high alert, high stress
Yeah.
at
It's
all
survival
times.
mode.
Yeah. So a lot of times, so the first thing usually, because it's usually all in their head, because they don't have a work management system, they don't have,
That blows my mind.
right? Like I can't,
Genuinely blows my mind.
right? And so what I'll do with them, literally one of the first things that I do is I will do a brain dump exercise with them. And I call it brain dump bliss. And literally what I do is I love Monday.com. And so I have a Monday board up, and they start right? And I've got sections of it of what are the tasks that need to be completed right now that are on your mind? What are the worries, the things like I know that system's broken, I just haven't had a chance to get to it type things, or taxes are due, I know they're due, I haven't even thought about what I need to do, right? Like all of those things that you wake up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I need to, right? Like,
Yes.
but then you get about your day and you forget about it, right? And
There's actually like a really funny episode of Gilmore Girls when this is so niche, but this is when Lorelai is about to open the inn
yeah,
and it's her in bed and she's sleeping and like every 5 minutes she wakes up and calls the inn's voicemail and she leaves herself a voicemail that's like, remember to pay blah, 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 and then she hangs up the phone and like 5 minutes later she'll wake up and she'll leave like
yeah,
17 more voicemails and in the
that's
morning
it.
she's got like 34 voicemails from herself in the middle of the night because it's just like you need somewhere to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right. So you need, right, like a lot of them. So a lot of it's in their heads and they're managing their businesses, they're managing their teams, they're managing their lives, their families, everything all here. And so as well as like their wish list, right? For most of us, we're entrepreneurs because we want to impact people and we want to make a difference in the world. And we've got this unique skill set, this unique ability, this unique idea, whatever it may be, that we want to put out into the world to make a difference. And so
Totally.
we've got those too. And so what I do is I just have them go. Right. And so I'll have them like tell me, and I'll just type as they're saying, and I'll say, what else? What else you got? What else is on your brain? Give me some worries. Give me some issues. What's happening with the team? What that one person, what do they need to do that's driving you nuts? Right. Like, and just have them get it all out. And it's like at first, like the first, they'll maybe write like 7 or 8 things and they're like, okay, I can't think of anything else. And then I'll start to ask questions. What else do you have?
Yeah.
Where do you want to, what's your next idea? What's going on with this? What's going on with that? When's the last time you took a vacation? Why don't you take a vacation? Right. And like all of a sudden it just like spills out of them and it just comes out and it goes fast.
Yeah.
Right. And it just, and so I'm typing as fast as I can, but all of a sudden we've got now, and there's a point that comes to that they just kind of pause and I say, what else? And they don't have anything. And it's like, you watch just the tension leave their bodies because their mind and their brain is clear for probably the first time in years, maybe even decades, that they've actually like they can take a peaceful breath because they
Yeah.
didn't lose anything, right? Like they didn't, because they got it out of their head, it doesn't mean they lost anything because we captured it all.
Totally.
But literally they start crying
I was gonna say.
almost every time.
I knew it.
Every time because it's just such a relief.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing that we're able to do is we're able to look at that list and we're able to then prioritize. And it could be the thing that's just the most painful, like, oh my gosh, get this off my plate literally as soon as possible. It
Yeah.
could be the thing that's most urgent, right? Like, I need to pay taxes tomorrow. They're due. Like, this needs to happen, whatever that may be, right? And like, just actually putting it in order and moving them around to actually do it. And if they've got a team available to them, we can actually start to delegate some of those tasks that they've got on their list. And so that's usually where we start because you need to create space first for them to be able to move, right? They're so
Yep.
tight when you first get in there and there's so much in their brains. The second that you can get it out, loosen up, and then take some of those tasks and kind of clear that out of the clutter and kind of smooth that out. And maybe it's just the low hanging fruit. Maybe it's literally the thing that's just the easiest to get done, but it clears space both from their brain as well as the to-do list in order to get that done. And that's where we start. And that gets us rolling into actually creating process and ease and flow and alignment for them in their businesses.
It honestly blows my mind that a business owner, like somebody had an idea and they're like, I'm going to start a business. And then they start that business and they don't have these simple kinds of systems in place to get that work done. Like for me, I don't know, maybe this is just because my personality and like the way that I was raised and like the fact that I was in project management, but like genuinely every single day, I start my day. I come to work, I grab my little coffee, I sit down at my desk and I at first I do exactly what you say. I brain dump and I'm like, okay, what are the things that I need to get done today? I'll check my weekly planning and be like, okay, what is on that to-do list for today? I map out my schedule and then I check my emails and write down like all the rest of my to-do lists, and they're broken up between like quick ticks, so things that are like 5 minutes or less, and then some of my major tasks, which are going to take up the rest of the day. And then I time block based off of like, okay, get my quick ticks done, like from, 9:45 to 10 or to like 11:30. And then I have lunch at noon, and then I have a meeting here. And then like, this is where all the major tasks get done. And like, I, I just don't understand how life functions any other way, because to your point, I would be like, there would be so much noise in my head that it would be truly impossible for me to become, or to me, for me to show up like as my best employee, as my best self. And I mean, I could do a whole other podcast episode on just the amount of things that I do on a regular basis in order to show up as my most effective self. Like everything from taking time for myself, which is one of the things you mentioned, to like the supplements that I take for my brain function. Like all of those things are so that when I'm here from 9 to 5, I am maximizing my ability as a human being to be the most effective that I can. And I'm like, as a business person, this is your job, is to be the best, because you have to orchestrate.
But Maddie, you realize that this is a gift that you have, right? Like this is, you rattle that off and I'm like, yeah, I hear you. And like this is a gift that you have, that you are able to do that.
Oh gosh, it's wild. I truly thought that everybody else was like, I thought everyone was with me on this.
No, I mean, I hear you and I right, like we're totally right there. But what I see is a lot of entrepreneurs are visionaries.
Yeah.
They don't want the details. They're the and this is a skill that I don't necessarily excel at, right? I'm a total
Yeah.
introvert. They're extroverts. So they're the ones that are meet and greet. They're talking to everybody, they're making deals, they love doing the lives, they love connecting with people, they love networking, they love having these big ideas and I've got this big plan. But then you
Totally.
ask them to go into the details of actually getting it done and that's where it stalls out.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you pose it that way, because it took me so long to figure out the kind of business that I wanted to have, because I knew that I wanted to create an impact. Like I've always known deep down that I was going to be my own boss in some way, shape, or form. And working for other people has always been difficult because I'm always executing their vision. And that is what I knew set me apart, and that like I was going to have my own company someday, because I would not I wouldn't feel fulfilled for my entire life knowing that I'm executing somebody else's vision
Right.
every day.
Right.
And however, though, I never had like a product idea, so I never felt like I connected with that like visionary concept as well as I think other people have if you have like a product or service that you sell. Um so it's interesting because I guess like they're really, I mean, I've always known this, I guess, that entrepreneurs are a rare breed. They're definitely a personality type. There are definitely some continuities between
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and what they have going on. They got like definitely a couple screws loose.
Totally. I mean, the level of risk that we
Yeah.
take and the level of even what's the word I'm looking for? Like self reflection or self, like we put ourselves on purpose through some of the hardest things and kind of face things about ourselves that aren't necessarily pretty. And yet we
Yeah.
do it on purpose and we continue to do it over and over and over again so that we can get better and we can make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're definitely different, right? We're always going to be pushing, we're always going to be moving. I have to say though, in my experience working with visionaries, entrepreneurs, um, for the most part, when I put a work management tool like Monday.com up for them, the visionary, the business owner, the teams love it. The teams take to it like that,
Yeah.
happy as could be, because finally, right?
Good process. Yeah.
The boss isn't the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
Finally, we've got some systems, some flow. Their lives get exponentially easier, like on day one.
Yeah.
Visionary takes at least a year to start using the work management tool. Like we
Mm.
talk about the work management tool, their eyes cross, they start texting, it's fascinating. But I've seen it over and over and over again. So it is what it is. It's just their brains just work differently, right? Like I
Yeah.
find it so cool. Like, oh my gosh, look what we can do now, right? Like,
Yeah.
look at this automation we put into place. We literally just saved you like 2 hours of your day. And
Yeah.
they're like, cool, right? And then they're off. It's fascinating.
Wait,
So
this is wild because I talk to my friend about this all the time. He went in to go and help his best friend's business, and he's very like a process guy, and
Mhm.
his business partner is definitely the visionary. And he went and he tried to set up all these project management solutions for him, and he cannot get him to use them.
Correct.
So how do you get them to use the service and the project management softwares?
In all honesty, I don't.
Hmm,
I kind of stopped trying. Um,
interesting.
or so there's a couple things. You either need to make it so easy, so they've got like literally one board or one page or one thing to look at, and that's what they do if that works for them. A lot of times, for me, it's for the teams. And
Yeah,
what I found is eventually, but it takes about a year or more, the visionary will come around and start using it more and more because they're seeing the efficiencies with the team and they're starting to get on board and they're starting to understand. But it honestly has to be limited in
yeah.
because it's too much for them. It's too much of the detail for them and they can't do it. So for the visionaries, a lot of times will create dashboards so that they can see kind of,
Mm,
like a CEO dashboard. So they can see
yeah.
every piece of what's happening in the business, but it's a picture. It's colorful. They like looking at it. And so it's something that they're able to use and to do like with their teams. And then we'll set up, if we have special projects, we'll set up, specific boards for them
Yeah.
so that they can just look at that, right? Because
Yeah,
if you show them all the stuff you've got going on, their eyes are going to cross. They're gonna, right? Like they're they find something else to do. Like it's wild.
totally.
Like just they multitask. So you're literally talking to them and they start multitasking because they don't want to look at what you're showing them. So and it happens every time, every single
That's
time.
so funny. I
Hmm.
also imagine too that eventually if they start using it, it's probably because their teams are bullying them, being like, well, we are working over here on the project management software, but somebody's not involved. And they're like, okay, finally, I'll get into it.
Well, and it's that thing of like the visionary will say, "Where is this? Where's that? Where's that? I need this." And they're like, "Monday board, Monday board, Monday board, Monday board." And it's like,
Yeah.
maybe I should learn how to use that, right? So that
Yeah.
they know where to go to get what they need immediately.
So how do you translate these things into processes after you've done this whole brain dump exercise?
There's a few other exercises that we go through, to figure it out, but it's really about just creating clarity, right? Like
Mm,
and I think with that brain dump, it helps. We
yeah.
also do have you heard of Pareto's Law?
No, I haven't.
Is it Pareto? It's Pareto. The 80-20, right? So it's basically like 80% of your profits probably coming from like 20% of your customers.
Okay.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
applies all different places, right? Like also like 80% of your complaints is probably coming from like 20%, right? So like
Okay.
so it's kind of so we also do that exercise to see like what are you doing that's actually making you the money? What are you
Mm,
doing that's actually causing all of the problems? Like what are you like
yeah.
let's start there, right? Like let's
Yeah.
start on kind of that. I call it the critical path. So it's kind of if we were to take it and say, okay, how do people find out about your business? They've never heard about you. How do they find out about your business? Podcast. Great. They found your podcast, right? So that's in one piece. How's that going? Is it
Yeah.
excellent? You've got all the process in place, or there's a bunch of back and forth. It's awful. We need some work there. Right. And then the next step is okay, so from the podcast, how do they learn about your business? Well, we've got an opt in that we actually have them come in and we've got a free ebook on, whatever that we can have them do. Okay, how's that going? Are you manually sending it out every time somebody asks for it? Or do you have a funnel in place that, they can go from here to here and it's a seamless process and it's working well? People are coming in. We're actually getting new leads every single day from people who are getting my podcast, right? And so we go through that and we don't look at, yeah, but I've got a podcast, but I've also got an Instagram account and I've also got TikTok and we're not, right? Like compared to the podcast, right? Like let's say, for example, you're getting 100 podcasts every single day and you're getting 2 TikTok.
Right.
Let's focus on this one.
Yeah, focus in on where it isn't, because you're you're zeroing in on the customer's journey, but not just any customer, it's your consistent, most, I guess, valuable customer, I would say.
Yeah, I have had clients over the years that they pay me the least and they are the biggest pain in the butt. And I've gotten rid of clients and realized I literally have taken 4 hours a day out of my workload because of this one person who literally could not get it together. Right? Or just couldn't, it was like fire drill all over the place. So it's even
they were the bottleneck.
Right. They were the problem and yet they couldn't get out of, and you work with them until the reason your business is a hot mess, I hate to say this, but it's you. It's the entrepreneur, right? It is the owner.
Honestly,
It is more. It's, and I don't mean it's your fault, but it's your fault, right? It is. You created this and you're continuing this. So you are the one that has to change both your mindset, your actions, your thought processes, all of it. It all has to change and you have to be willing to do that in order to make a difference. And sometimes you're ready and sometimes you're not, and both are okay, but just understand that it's you, right? And creating
Honestly,
that.
I think that is how you should open all of your client meetings the first time that you meet them, because that is the truth. And especially if they're coming to you, it's likely out of need because they realize that their business is either A, running inefficiently or fully hemorrhaging and they need someone to come in and help them. And the thing about small businesses and entrepreneurs is that their businesses are a reflection of them, because they're the visionary. They're the person who's driving not only the business, but they're driving how that business is run and how that business is communicated to customers.
Mm-hmm.
So if that business is a hot mess, it's likely because you're a hot mess. And that, I guarantee you, is reflected in other forms around their life. Maybe they don't have a healthy lifestyle, or maybe their house is super cluttered, or maybe they can't really have stable relationships, which is probably why they don't have teams that can hang out and stay for a long time and work with them. And it's if you are ready to have somebody come and help you address all of these issues, you have to be willing to address the issues within yourself, or else nothing's really ever going to change.
Agreed. And I think that's with any change, right? Change is hard. I get it. I totally get it. And I think that there's something to be said about, there's so much information, books, podcasts, marketing, everything on sales and how to get more sales. And there's so much information on marketing and your marketing efforts and everything that you need to do. And right, there's so many. I'm a book nerd. I literally finish a book, I think, every other day, right? I love to read. And I love the operations. I love the business aspect. I love delegation. I have a hard time finding books on the topic.
Yes.
We're taught how to make the money. All you got to do is make the money, but they never talk about the fact that once you make the money, you're actually miserable doing the business and doing the work, and you don't know how to get yourself out of it. And there's not really anybody out there that nobody knows anybody who can help. And you go to try to find books and you go to try to find somebody, and there's nobody there. And I think there's some stigma as well, that they're so embarrassed that they've let it get to this point, and they think that they
Mhm.
should know, and they think that everybody else has already gotten it figured out, and everybody else,
Yeah.
like, so they don't say anything and they just pretend like everything's fine. I have worked with so many businesses where on social media and on the front end, they look like calm, serene. They've got it together. They know everything. This is how business and life should be. On the back end of their business, they're a huge stress case. They talk as fast, right? Like in front, they're talking like this. On the back end, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Right. Like, and they're like literally messaging me, they're slacking me, they're right. Because they're so worked up about what's happening. Like, this is
Oh my
normal. This is normal of what I see, right? Because they're so stressed, because there's so much to do and so many things to happen, but on the front end. And so what they see is everybody on the front end. They don't get to see the back end of other
Yeah,
businesses like me. So they think that everybody else has it figured out. So like, I can't admit that there's a problem. I can't admit that I need help
of
because,
course.
yeah, because
I mean, this is
there's
like,
something, yeah, there's a stigma or something to go with that.
I think this is an excellent metaphor for life in general. I think a lot of people, especially, I think people, honestly, between the ages of like 18 and 45, are confronted with issues either with themselves or with challenges in life. And we all are supposed to act like everything's fine and like we've got it together and we know what we're doing. And there is a real stigma around saying, like, I actually don't know what I'm doing and I'm actually experiencing X, Y, and Z emotion and that I'm not really comfortable or sure how to handle. And like, I know things have to change, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to change them. I don't even want to ask for help because from the outside, everyone looks fine. And it's because we're all doing the same thing. We're all being like, I don't know what's going on internally, but I'm going to externally make it seem fine. And it's such, business is such like a metaphor for life. Entrepreneurialism is a metaphor for life. And I think the smartest thing an entrepreneur can do is understand and accept that they are not the smartest person in the room. And what they should be doing instead is hiring people, if you have that capability, or just asking people who are much smarter than you for advice and for help. And then heed that advice. Don't just like take advice or ask for it and then not apply it. I think that is a great way to lose people.
Well, so there's something to that though as well, in that take the advice and see what resonates with you,
Yeah.
and take the pieces. So what I've realized over the years is that I've tried to do it his way, or I've tried to do it her way because she says that that's the way to do it, and I'm miserable doing it. But if
Yeah.
I just tweak that a little bit, right? So the way that I do things now is taking a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit of what he said, a little bit of what she said, a little bit of that
Yeah.
advice, a little bit of that experience, right? All of those
Mhm.
things that have kind of bundled up. But I've been able to let go of what doesn't resonate with me and doesn't quite work, to
Yeah.
be able to, and it doesn't mean that I just don't do it. It means that I just do it my way, or do it in a way that feels authentic and comfortable for me. And then I
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times when people give you advice, it's simply because they want to see you succeed and they want to see you excel and be in a better place than when you asked for the advice, right?
Mhm.
And if that happens because what you heard them say was helpful enough to get you to the next position, like they're going to be great, they're going to be happy for you. And I think much of life, and so far what I've learned about entrepreneurialism, is exactly what you said. It's a lot of how I started this journey was going on Instagram and seeing all these people who I looked up to and being like, how did they get there? And then listening to all those crazy people on Instagram being like, how you grow your social media following, do these 5 things. And they are always the same 5 things. And I don't know
Right.
if that's because those are the 5 things that actually work or if it's because everyone saw it once and is now just copying each other because that video went viral. And
Right.
it's like so much convoluted information and there's just honestly such an abundance of information when you're starting a business that you're taking notes and you're like, okay, here are all the things I'm supposed to be doing, and it's too much. It's too many things. Just start with what resonates with you. Make I think the key also too is to just start with consistent processes. So for me, I explained it earlier, it's like how I start my day is those to-do lists. And it wasn't until very recently that I started making quarterly goals and quarterly plans. But I think to just get started, like do the thing that needs to get up first. So if you want to, I don't know, start a podcast today, you know, start by writing down what you want your podcast to do, like what you want it to be about, make an ideal guest list, reach out to those guests, figure out how you want to record and edit your software and where you want to post it, and then just start from there. And then slowly add bricks over time that will help you grow your business to where you want it to go. But like, I feel like don't stress so much about all the other things, because sometimes it's just do the first right thing is what I always like to say.
I love that. And I think the problem with that is that what you're talking about, which you're speaking my love language, is the unsexy stuff,
Yeah. That's
right?
so funny
So
because
it's
to
the
me, like,
stuff
that
that
is
they,
the sexy stuff.
oh, me too. Like, I think it's amazing, right? Like, it's literally, I could sit here and talk for hours about
Yeah.
like the, how cool are these automations? Like, how cool did I set this up? How cool did I consistently, like, I literally have reached out to someone new, right? Like networking or whatever, like literally every day for the last year. Like, how amazing is, right? Like,
Yeah.
that to me is success, right? And in all honesty, the systems, that's where the freedom is, right? Entrepreneurs are looking for freedom, right?
Totally.
And that's where it is. It's in the unsexy stuff. It's in the boring stuff. It's in the stuff. It's not the shiny objects that we're all chasing about the 10x your sales in the next 30 days and, you know, go viral in the next 2 days and all of those things. It's actually consistent effort over time. And it can be small stuff. It's like baby steps half the time. Like, it's not even, right? Like, send an email a day. It will
Yeah.
make a difference in your business.
Yeah. And if you're
Right?
tracking all of that and you go back at the end of the year and you see just the culmination of the work that you've been able to accomplish, I mean, that's an incredible feat. And it doesn't always feel like the biggest win, but those are the kinds of things that will see you succeed. I like to call it like hustling in quiet, or like hustling in secret, or hustling like behind the scenes, because it's not you're not shouting on Instagram, buy my products, I'm the best business. You're doing the kind of stuff that's like the behind the scenes grind, hard work that will eventually pay off. It's kind of like if you're applying to jobs and you spend a lot of time working on your resume and you send out jobs like on a consistent basis and eventually you hear back from one, it's because you hustled so hard behind the scenes that it was that work was bound to pay off.
Mm-hmm. It's inevitable, right? Like, it's absolutely
Totally.
inevitable. But what I like to call it is it's actually building the flow state into your business.
Mm,
Right. So I don't think that you just happen to like fall into the flow state. And then all of a sudden, one day you look up and you're
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, I have all this time freedom. I have all of this money.
totally.
Like, I have financial freedom. I have time freedom. I'm making an impact. Right. Like, it, that doesn't happen. You build that into your business.
Yeah. And it's the same with life, right? In order for you to be in a flow state in which, you're aligned with all the things you want and opportunities that align with your dreams and goals just come flooding in on a consistent basis, and it feels too easy and too good to be true, like that doesn't just happen because you like slipped and fell into the flow state. That's not how
Right.
it works. You have to
Right.
put in a ton of hard work behind the
Yeah.
scenes on yourself to realign, course correct, reevaluate, and then act according to your new thought process and self and mindset and mental
And
state. And
do it
like that's how you
consistently.
get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and through consistency,
Yeah.
and business is no different.
Agreed. 100%. And I think it's choosing to do that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
choosing to do the hard stuff so that it becomes easy, right? And
Yeah.
choosing to go there, right? Not
Yeah.
just covering it up and pretending like everything's all right, but actually going in the middle of it and be like, this is really uncomfortable. This is ick, right? Like
Mhm.
it's kind of like I always say, it's like, the hot mess business is like that closet that's just, you've shoved so much stuff in it and you just slam the door and you're afraid to open the door because it's going to fall all on top of you,
Yeah,
right? It's actually like taking it, like literally everything out of the closet and spreading it all over the room. And it's a total disaster, and it's miserable going through it. And it's a lot of work, and it just is not what you want to be doing with your Saturday, right? Like just all of
yeah,
those things. When you're just looking at all of the crap that you've just shoved in there and, just left it, and you're just looking at it, and it's that, right?
totally.
It's, you have to go through it. You have to take everything out of the closet. You have to then reorganize it, regroup it, and pull the stuff out that's not working. The stuff that is working, let's put it back in the closet, but let's put it in nice and neat, right?
Yeah,
So that
and
we're
the
able to
best
then
part
use
about
it
that,
and actually find those pair of shoes that we've been looking
yes.
for.
And then afterwards, the best part too is that you've learned now that making the hard choice in the moment, that's not the instant gratification moment, that is to just shove it in the closet wherever and deal with it later. It's like, no, I learned that the annoying thing to do in the moment is to go into the other room and put it back where it belongs, as opposed to the short term, instant gratification, easy choice, which is to just shove it in the closet and slam
Right.
the door. Because you're like, I don't want to get to that place where there's so much shit in there that I don't know what to do with, because I learned from the last time.
Well,
And that's the beauty of
okay.
that process.
Totally. And now that you've got that cleaned out closet from a business perspective, like it is clean forevermore. You
Yeah.
never have to deal with that again. You never have to deal with that closet again, which means you now have the time freedom. You're not looking for those shoes for 20 minutes in the morning trying to find, where it is, or trying to find that sweater that you put there somewhere at some point, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not spending all that time doing it. So now you've got the freedom to just grab the sweater, grab the shoes, and off you go, right? So, and from a business perspective, like you're building time freedom into your business, you're building flow.
Yeah. I mean, this is just truly like a lesson of making the hard choice now so you can live easier tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end this episode. Tracy, thank you so much. This has been truly a satisfying conversation for me.
Agreed. Yes. Love it.